She was known as the most beautiful woman in the world. Her face graced the silver screen of Hollywood's golden age, captivating audiences with a beauty so profound that men worshipped the ground she walked on and women wished they were her. She was the toast of Tinseltown, a glamorous icon who starred alongside legends like Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy. But behind the mesmerizing eyes and the dazzling smile lay a mind so sharp, so brilliant, that it would eventually change the world forever. While she was acting out the roles assigned to her, the seductress, the temptress, the ornament, she was secretly working on a revolutionary invention that would lay the foundation for the technology you are likely using right now to watch this video. She invented a system that would make Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS possible. She was Hedy Lamarr, the Hollywood star who invented the wireless future. This is the incredible story of a woman who refused to let her beauty define her, a woman who escaped a war-torn Europe only to fight it with science, and whose genius was ignored for decades simply because the world refused to believe that a movie star could be a genius. Hedy Lamarr was born Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler in 1914 in Vienna, Austria. She was born into a world of culture and intellect, the daughter of a banker and a pianist. From a young age, Hedy displayed a voracious curiosity. Her father, a gentle intellectual, would take her on long walks through Vienna, explaining how the machines in the street worked, how the streetcars moved, and how the printing presses operated. He instilled in her a deep love for the mechanics of the world. Hedy was captivated. She would later say that she loved to understand how things functioned, but she also knew that her intellect was a secret weapon in a world that valued women only for their appearance. She dropped out of school at a young age to pursue her dream of acting, but she never lost that analytical way of thinking. In 1930, at just 16 years old, she landed her first film role in a German movie called Money on the Street. It was the beginning of a career that would skyrocket her to fame in Europe. By the age of 18, she was already becoming a household name, known for her fearless approach to the camera. However, her life in Austria took a dark and terrifying turn. At 19, she married Friedrich Mandl, a wealthy Austrian munitions manufacturer. Mandl was a powerful man, a controlling fascist who liked to show off his young trophy wife at his business parties. But for Hedy, these parties were a prison. Mandl was deeply involved in supplying weapons to the Axis powers, Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy. He hosted high-ranking officials in their lavish home, men like Benito Mussolini and high-ranking Nazi commanders. Hedy was forced to sit there, silent and beautiful, looking pretty while powerful men discussed the machinery of war. She was treated as a possession, a doll with no voice. But while Mandl thought she was just listening, she was learning. She listened to them talk about torpedoes, radio guidance systems, and the problems of jamming signals. She absorbed the conversations about the limitations of radio-controlled weapons. She memorized the technical jargon. She was a prisoner in her own home, gathering secrets about the coming war without even trying. She realized that her husband was a monster, and she knew she had to escape. The risk was monumental. If she tried to run, Mandl had the power to hunt her down, and he likely would have killed her. In a scene straight out of a spy thriller, Hedy planned her escape. One night, while dining with Mandl, she drugged her maid and slipped out of the mansion disguised in the maid's clothes. She boarded a train and fled to Paris, leaving behind her husband, her country, and the life of a silent ornament. From Paris, she made her way to London, where she met Louis B. Mayer, the head of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios. Mayer was looking for the next big European starlet, and Hedy was it. He offered her a contract, and she boarded the ship to America, leaving the darkness of Europe for the bright lights of Hollywood. She arrived in 1938, just as the war she had escaped was about to engulf the world. MGM changed her name from Hedwig Kiesler to Hedy Lamarr. They marketed her as the most beautiful woman in the world. They put her in films like Algiers and Samson and Delilah. She became the highest-paid actress of her time. But Hedy was bored. She was tired of playing the exotic beauty, who stood there and looked good. She had an active mind that was starving for a challenge. She missed the intellectual conversations she had heard in Vienna, but now she wanted to have them as a participant, not a bystander. In Hollywood, Hedy set up a laboratory in her home. She spent her evenings reading technical journals and tinkering with inventions. She famously met Howard Hughes, the aviator and film producer. She noticed that Hughes struggled to make his planes faster. She applied her knowledge of fish and birds to the problem, buying books on anatomy and fluid dynamics, and eventually sketching a new wing design for him. She presented it to Hughes, who was stunned. He implemented her design. She had the mind of an engineer, but the world only saw her face. It wasn't until 1940, over dinner with composer George Antheil, that her scientific destiny really clicked. Antheil was a composer known for his avant-garde music, including his Ballet Mécanique, which used multiple player pianos synced together. During their conversation, they talked about the war. Germany was advancing. The British ships were being sunk by German torpedoes. The Americans were preparing to enter the fight. The problem was torpedoes. At the time, torpedoes were often guided by radio signals from the ship. But the enemy could easily jam the radio signal, causing the torpedo to miss its target. It was like trying to listen to a radio station while someone else plays static noise in the background. It made precision strikes nearly impossible. Hedy Lamarr realized she had heard the solution to this problem years ago in her ex-husband's living room. She suggested to Antheil that they create a system where the radio signal would jump from frequency to frequency. If the signal kept moving, the enemy couldn't jam it because they wouldn't know where to aim the static. It was like a game of musical chairs with the radio waves. Hedy and Antheil began working on the idea. Hedy used her knowledge of frequency hopping from those dinner parties. Antheil used his knowledge of syncing mechanical player pianos. They envisioned a system where a transmitter and a receiver on the torpedo would have piano rolls punched with slots. As the rolls turned, the radio frequency would change in perfect synchronization between the ship and the torpedo. The Germans would try to jam one frequency, but the signal would have already jumped to another. It was brilliant. It was elegant. It was ahead of its time. They applied for a patent in 1941. The patent was granted in 1942. The invention was called the secret communication system. But this is where the tragedy of Hedy Lamarr's story truly begins. Despite the patent, despite the desperate need for this technology, the United States Navy refused to use it. They looked at a movie star and a piano player and dismissed them as amateurs. They suggested she should sell war bonds instead of trying to be an inventor. The Navy reportedly classified the patent, which actually prevented Hedy from ever selling it commercially, but they never actually developed it. They claimed it was too cumbersome to fit the player piano mechanisms into a torpedo. Hedy offered her services to the government. She famously wrote to Theodore Roosevelt, offering to use her connections to help the war effort, but she was politely told that the best thing she could do was kiss soldiers at war bond rallies. So she did. Hedy Lamarr helped raise over $25 million for the war effort through her appearances. She gave her time, her fame, and her energy to the war. Meanwhile, her patent sat in a drawer gathering dust. Hedy Lamarr, the genius inventor, was silenced by bureaucracy and sexism. The war ended. The patent expired in 1959 without ever being used by the Navy during World War II. As the years passed, Hedy Lamarr's film career began to fade. As she got older, Hollywood was less interested in her exotic beauty and less interested in her intellect. She became increasingly reclusive. In the 1960s, she was involved in a scandal when she was arrested for shoplifting. Tragic evidence of her mental state and the isolation she felt. The world forgot her. They remembered her as the ecstasy girl, the beauty, but they forgot the inventor. But the world was about to catch up to her genius. In the late 1950s, during the height of the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis, the U.S. Navy was desperate for better communication systems. A group of engineers at Sylvania Electronic Systems rediscovered Hedy's patent. They realized that vacuum tubes and player piano rolls were indeed obsolete, but the concept of frequency hopping was not. By the 1960s, they had miniaturized the technology using transistors. They used Hedy Lamarr's concept to develop secure communications for the ships blockading Cuba during the missile crisis. The concept worked perfectly. The signals couldn't be jammed. The technology spread to the military. It was used in the Vietnam War. It became the standard for secure military communication. But it wasn't until the late 1990s that the true impact of her invention on civilian life became clear. The digital revolution was taking hold. The internet was being born. The concept of frequency hopping was the key to allowing multiple devices to talk over the radio spectrum without interference. It became the foundation for CDMA, a technology used in early cell phones. It was then adapted for Wi-Fi, the wireless network that connects our laptops and smartphones. It is the basis for Bluetooth, which connects our headphones and speakers. It is used in GPS satellites to guide us to our destinations. Hedy Lamarr's invention of frequency hopping. That piano roll idea she sketched on her table with a composer in 1941 is the invisible skeleton of our modern wireless world. She didn't just invent a tool for war, she invented the language of the digital age. And yet, for decades, she received no credit and certainly no money. Hedy Lamarr lived in relative obscurity in Florida for the latter part of her life. It wasn't until 1997, when she was in her 80s, that the world finally came knocking. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, an organization dedicated to digital rights, gave her an award for her pioneering work. It was called the EFF Pioneer Award. She had tears in her eyes. She said it was the first time anyone had ever thanked her. The patent had expired 40 years earlier, so she never saw a penny of the billions of dollars generated by her idea. Apple, Samsung, Verizon, the entire tech industry owes a debt to Hedy Lamarr. Shortly before her death in 2000, a film crew visited her. She was frail, but her eyes were still sharp. She famously said, "Any girl can be glamorous. All she has to do is stand still and look stupid." She knew how the world worked. She knew they wanted her to be the pretty face, not the smart brain. But she had outsmarted them all. She died in January 2000 at the age of 85. Her obituaries in newspapers around the world mourned the passing of a Hollywood legend. But the real story was different. She wasn't just an actress. She was a survivor of abuse, a refugee from fascism, a patriot who tried to save her adopted country, and a visionary scientist who changed the way humanity communicates. Today, when you pick up your phone and connect to the internet, when you use Bluetooth headphones to listen to music, or when your GPS tells you to turn left, you are using a piece of Hedy Lamarr's mind. It took the world nearly 50 years to realize that the most beautiful woman in the movies was also one of the smartest. She is the patron saint of the internet, the unsung mother of the digital age. She proved that beauty and brains are not mutually exclusive. She proved that a woman in a cocktail dress can hold a patent just as easily as a man in a lab coat. Her life was a mixture of glamour and tragedy, but her legacy is immortal. She once complained that people told her she had a pretty face, but that her life was boring. She said, "I'll tell you about my life. You'll find it boring." She was wrong. Her life is the most fascinating story of them all. Hedy Lamarr fought against the constraints of her time. She fought to be seen, to be heard, and to be respected. She invented the future while the world was looking at her face. And today, she is finally getting the recognition she always deserved. She is no longer just a starlet. She is the inventor of the wireless world.